let's go back to our foldable that we made. Miss Prather needs to find hers. I believe it's... Let me get in there. Here it is. Okay. And let's review our elements of art. So the first element of art is color. So color, just like we talked about, we have 3 primary colors. They're blue, red, and yellow. And what are primary colors? Primary colors are the 3 colors that create all of the other colors. So if you combine red and blue, you get purple. Red and yellow creates orange, and blue and yellow creates green. And we can put all of these colors that we made on our color wheel, and that's what this is called. Okay, now next we have line. And a line is simply a dot that went for a walk. Now we have thin lines, you have thick lines, wavy lines, zigzag, and I have my lazy line. Next we have shape. So shape and form are really different things. Remember we talked about this. Shape is something flat. There's no dimension to it. There's no depth. So this post-it note is flat. This is a shape. This, however, is not flat, right? This has form and volume and dimension, so this is called a form. So do we see the difference between these two? This one's flat. This is not flat. So in our elements of art questions that I asked you on Friday or Thursday, I asked you about artwork number 2. Number 1, artwork number 1, my bad, I'm sorry. And I said, what element of art do we see based on the questions that I asked? So we see that it feels like there's something you can hold in this painting, correct? So is that a shape or is that a form? So let's look at our shapes and our forms. So this, I can't hold the shape, but I said something you can hold with dimension and has sides. So the shape is really flat, right? However, the form I can hold and it has sides. Let's look at another example of form. Let's look at this. This has sides. Do we see that? There are 4 sides, actually 5 sides, and a top. Okay, so the answer to that one was form. Okay, so shape and form are 2 different things. Shapes we can have geometric and we can have organic. Now what does that mean? So a geometric form, or shape, would be something like this. It's a square, right? This is a geometric shape. An organic shape would be something like this blobby cloud that I made. Kind of looks like a flower, kind of looks like a cloud, but it's definitely something you could find in nature, right? So this is a geometric and an organic shape. Do we see the difference? This has straight sides. This has rounded and different kinds of sides. So there's no predictability in an organic form, or a shape, Okay, now let's move on to form. And a form has depth and dimension, right? We talked about what depth is. So there's width, which is how wide something is, and there's height, which is how tall something is, and then there's depth, which is how far back something goes. So if we look at, let's look at this tissue box. This has depth, so it's got a side, a side, a side, a side, right? But it also goes back a few inches on each side. So if you're looking at it in space, kind of from the side, it goes back in space, okay? And we can talk more about that another time. As long as we understand that there's a difference between shape and form. Shape and form are not the same thing. I know it sounds like they are, but they're not. And a good example is just this picture right here that we drew. This is a shape, and this is a form. Okay, let's move on to value. So value is the difference between light and dark. Most of you got it right on number 3. So we see from the top here it goes dark and then it gets lighter at the bottom. Do we see that? There is a lot of texture, and I saw some of you answer with that question as well. But the main focus and my main question was, what makes it look like it's going from dark to light? And if you can tell me where the light source is, that would be awesome. Does anyone know where it is? The light source is most likely directly in front of this object or a little below it, because it's lightest on the bottom and it's darkest on top. Remember we talked about light source and how it's the closer it is to the light source, the lighter it is, and the further away it is, the darker it gets. Okay, we have texture. Texture is the way the surface of something feels. So for example, let's look at this. This is some string I have. This is kind of bumpy, right? If you look at it close up, it's definitely really bumpy. Where is I cannot find the end of this string. Uh-oh. That's funny. Okay. If you look at it close up, it's definitely really bumpy, and it's braided too. But braided can be kind of a version of bumpy, right? And if we look at this ruler, it's really smooth. And I saw some of you answered for your own kinds of textures that you put in here. Some of you said wet, which I understand might be how something feels. However, wet is not a texture because it's not the way something is just made on its own. So this paper can become wet, but it is originally very smooth, right? It is a smooth paper. So what we're talking about when we talk about texture is the way that something permanently feels, the surface of it, not necessarily how the state of its being. So something being wet or hot or cold is more having to do with outside effects, so things that are happening to it instead of what it already is. So if I am already, I guess, smooth as a person, I have skin, right? So I can become cold or hot or wet, but things have to happen to me for that to happen. Do we understand that? Okay, and lastly we have space. A lot of you, most of you, about a good 90% of us got this question right. Uh-oh, it's kind of hard to see it, huh? Let me just bring it closer. Okay. So space is the area in, around, above, and below something. So let's take a look at this marker on the sketchbook. So the space is around it. This is the object that is occupying this space. So people also occupy a space. So if you're sitting on a chair, you have become something that's being put in that space. So imagine an empty jar, okay? So a good way to think about space is to think of it as an empty jar. So there's a lot of space in here that's not filled, right? So we're going to talk about the space that's inside of something. So I am going to put one styrofoam ball in, and now this first styrofoam ball is filling in part of that space, but it's not fully filled in, right? So let's put in another one, and another one. See what's happening to our space? It's getting smaller and smaller. Do we see that? One more, and two more. So now, the space that was originally there is a lot less. There's not as much space, and it's being occupied or filled by something else. So that's what I mean by occupying space. We reviewed our elements of Art Foldable, and we're going to go ahead and review our motions really quick. Let's go ahead and stand up and do that now. Color, line, shape, form, value, texture, and then space, space, space. Remember? Because it goes out, out, out like an echo. Okay, 6th grade, go ahead and open up your sketchbook to the next blank page. Remember, that is the next available page, not just the page behind something you worked on or a random page. So on the top of your page, I want you to write the words still life. Leave some space around it and then draw a square, or a rectangle, excuse me, around the words like this. Okay? So now, what is a still life? Does anyone know what a still life is? If you don't, that's okay. What I want us to do is write the definition of a still life. You're going to use your best Spalding. And a still life is simply a painting or drawing of an arrangement of objects. And the words are on the screen for you. What kind of objects do you guys think belong in a still life? That's a good question. What would you put in a still life? For example, Van Gogh used to paint a lot of objects, and he would paint his shoes sometimes because they were so worn and they looked so interesting. What can be in a still life? Let's go ahead and write that down. So draw another asterisk. Should look like this by now. And you're going to write, what can I put in a still life? And then write question mark. And then below that, you're going to draw a dot, a bullet point. And I have a list of things, but I want you to write the first three. So go ahead and pause the video, write your first three items. Okay, so what I wrote was bowls, fruit, shoes, flowers, cups, tennis balls or soccer balls or footballs, so I'm going to write tennis balls, etc. And then I just wrote, and anything else I can think of. Anything else I can think of. Okay, so here's your task right now. Pause the video, go out and find at least 3 to 5 items in your house. Come back, put them in front of you, don't arrange them yet, and then you're also going to tell me what items you found for your still life, okay? So pause the video now, go out and find them. Good luck. Okay, so you have your objects in front of you. That's great. I hope you found at the very least 3 items. I hope you found at the very most 5. You don't want any more than that. It'll get a little too difficult. Okay. So what is the purpose of a still life? A still life, not only is it beautiful and it shows the beauty in everyday life, but still lifes help you to improve on your art skills. They help you to improve on your observational skills. So if I want to draw a chair and I'm not really sure how a chair looks, it helps me to continue to work on the same object over and over and over again until I'm 100% confident that I can draw a chair, right? So it's the same thing with still lifes. It helps you to be able to improve on, you know, adding value to certain things, adding texture to things, really understanding how things look, and being able to practice drawing what you actually see. So let's go ahead and put our items in front of us if they're not already. I'll show you mine. I have a soccer ball. I have a pair of shoes. I have some fruit. I have a little metal bowl, and I have this baking dish. Now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items. Okay, so the key to your still life, another key to your still life, is to arrange it in a way that looks very pleasing to you. So I'm going to show you 2 pictures of how I arranged my still life. One of them's good and one of them's bad. Which one do you think is bad? And why do you think it's bad? Probably because this is the biggest item and it was right in front of everything else. You couldn't see anything else in my still life, could you? So that's what you want to do. When you arrange your still life, you want to make sure that you can see everything and that you get all of the unique characteristics that are a part of your still life. It's kind of hard for me to do this backwards. I think it looks okay. Okay, so now you can see everything that I want to draw, and I might even prop this up here. That looks kind of cool, right? So now you can see everything that I want to draw and everything that I've laid out in front of me, and it's laid out in kind of an interesting way, right? So here's your task and your challenge, and you're going to upload a picture of it as well. I want you to lay out your still life in an interesting way, and you're going to make your picture fill up the page. It is graded based on participation and effort, so it's not graded on skill, okay? So you always want to sketch it out first. This way you can draw lightly and you can erase your mistakes. Doesn't need to be perfect. I want you to try to add a little bit of value, and if you have texture, try your best to capture what texture you see in front of you, okay? So it should not be rushed. You have the rest of the class time to finish this assignment. Go ahead and start now. I'll see you guys later.